So
So this is the International Working Group for
yeah,
the Peer Respite Soteria Summit Planning Team. And it's July 5th, 2021.
thank you, Grace. Yeah, we're here. We're on the same page. Um, so yeah, so I see this as part of a much bigger movement, and a lot has happened since 1971 till today. We've seen the various peer and survivor consumer organizations formed through the 70s, a strong movement which in the US anyways, and for many of us here in Canada, a definition of recovery principles and how we might support that. And so I don't know, when I came to this, I learned some things about Soteria previously. I think it started to appear on the internet around 2010. And I started, I'm always hoarding articles on my computer. So I've got all this material. So I started following this history. Open dialogue started to turn up there too, although it had already about 10 years of existence. And similar principles in that we're all supporting a very humanist, very person-centered, very respectful approach to helping people find meaning in their psychosis rather than become medicalized sheep, you know, which I see a lot of around my community, and it drives me crazy because people get comfortable, you know, they get their welfare checks and they get their monthly or weekly drop in and they go and play pool and nothing ever changes. And 10 years later, they're still doing the same thing, same routine, never growing, which really frustrates me. But they're professional patients and they're comfortable. And maybe that's,
Ouch.
but I don't know if you see that, you know, where you are. But anyways, for me, I think that the more, and Kim, I really like what you said. I really appreciate that sort of idea that this is about all the ideas that we share, maybe, you know, like through all these different movements, but also how they connect to the current movements for social justice, the Black Lives Matter here, every child matters in Canada, and so on and so forth, because ultimately, Soteria and Open Dialogue and the Icarus Project and each the work that each of us is doing is about supporting that greater um, goal of social justice of everybody getting a life worth living. We do it in our different ways. I've found that I've been able to incorporate certain. I work with people. I'm a person with lived experience. I've been sober for the last 30 years, but I live with something that I call Stan syndrome, and so I'm a person in recovery. That's uh, actually on my resume I put RNG because you need letters on a resume, but there's an asterisk and it says real nice guy. I don't have any letters, you know, but I've graduated from, you know, the lived experience school, and it's been very useful. So I support people in their own recovery and in their own personal growth. And all these ideas will help me. And I think I know people who will likewise. We may not form soterias, but being part of a greater movement is also a very important goal for us.
Thanks, Stan.
So, but when we started, we were focused on five episodes, five sessions. This is going to be a summit, and it's online. The first one was going to be sort of a big overview, some history, and what we've been calling the razzle dazzle. You know, the sort of trying to sell, or at least garner some excitement about the
So
soteria.
Stan, now you're talking about the format that we've agreed on to help the new people have an overview. So in October, 5 Sundays, and now you're talking about the first week.
Yeah, and so we need to sort of stay focused with that too. We identified three weeks for what we call nuts and bolts, which are practical tools to help people to either some of us want to establish a soteria or a pure respite where we live, that's one of my goals in coming in here. And I want to support some other people in that process too. But there's lots of different reasons that we're here. But we can always learn. So the biggest thing is that this be a really positive learning experience for all of us. And then we find the things that bring us together rather than, and I think it's every voice is important. So
Thanks, Dan.
really appreciate, Kim, what you said. And Grace, I think I get your perspective as well and respect that also. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. So then Jim, and I think I was next, and then Jen.
Okay, well, I don't do well down in the weeds, the detail. I'm more of a step back and let's get the big picture first, so I can understand where all the weeds fit. I have to do it that way, otherwise I get lost. But using the format that you had suggested, the big overview in the beginning and then the details and then kind of a summary, exchange of information, that's pretty much how good conferences go. I mean, from my experience. What I'm thinking is, in order to get all the voices, how about starting out with the common thought that the way we're doing behavioral health care all over the world isn't working, right? Not totally. There are various and sundry ways to get there. Who has their models? I love those. I mean, because they're, they take into consideration
the World Health Organization.
World Health Organization. Yeah, they're good. So perhaps, as the focus, the beginning, when you're coming up with a summit or a get together, what is the reason for us to come together? How about the world generally, behavioral health care is not really working at this particular point. Not it's working, it may be working some areas, maybe not working others, but generally overall not producing the results that we would like to see. So we talk about during that first day the way things are being done now, and then propose that there are many different ways around the world where people are trying to accommodate these needs. And that's what the rest of this summit is going to be about. Mm-hmm. So Belgium gets to have their say in a workshop. The Netherlands has, their say in a workshop. Mm-hmm. What are the other concepts? There's soteria, use that as a model. There's the peer respite as a model. Make sure that all of those are covered during those workshops, so that no matter where you are in the world, all of these folks here on this call and others have their say of what their system is now that isn't working and what you think, is working. And that's your workshop. You introduce all of these thoughts and ideas, and at the very end, you wrap it up together, in maybe in work groups and talk about these things. Pick the best of what you see from all the other folks, their best good ideas and what have you, and create maybe your own continuum within your country. Mm-hmm. Come up with it has to be a continuum. It's just not a point in time. Mm-hmm. So that's an organization that of the conference that I'm kind of suggesting here. Tell it what's working and what isn't working and what might work, and then have the workshops that describe some of all of these different approaches, and then at the end wrap it up and then let people talk together in groups to come up with something that might work for them, and that's their take home.
All right, thanks, Jim. So you're saying that make sure to bring the what's not working piece to the beginning of it as setting up the container for the summit.
Absolutely.
All right, so me and then Jen, and welcome Jim Gottstein from Alaska, who wrote the Zyprexa Papers, a book that you all could buy to read about his adventures in suing the pants off of Eli Lilly. So let's see. So so I feel a little bit caught in between currents, you know, when the new wave comes in and the old wave is going out, and you're like, which is a rich place. A lot of stuff gets stirred up, right? So where do I start? I've got two things tugging at me. And so one thing is in starting, so we've been meeting now for about 2 months, going into 3 months, and where, you know, it's that organic thing of we're meeting, we're starting to focus in, but we're also seeing, oh, you know, there's people that we're still continuing to reach out. And then the new people come in and they say, yeah, but what about this? And maybe we should do it this way. And then it's like, there's that tension between, do you then abandon what you're doing and go do something else? Do you try to incorporate things for people to feel that, like, why am I being invited in if you've already got it figured out? You know, that's a problem. So I just feel a tenderness in saying that that there's many of the organizers who have been working on it for the last 2 months. Many of us are old, and and I'm not gonna. I am old, but I'm not gonna include myself in the second part, because many of them have decades of experience of working in this area, and are naming that they want to make sure they're on their way out, and they have been talking about and watching their colleagues and comrades have their lives ruined by different coercive coercive weapons. And they're like, okay, this is my last hurrah. I want to make sure at least we leave something concrete. And so there is a push towards I think that's part of the urgency about having a product. You know, it's I'm on my way out, and for God's sakes, we need something for the next generation, and those of us still, you know, being caught in this cycle, to have this alternative. We were also trying originally to do it for August, and so there ended up being like a okay, just the facts, ma'am, kind of an urgency about doing it. And we just decided, no, that's not realistic, and it causes us to act out of an artificial urgency. So we pushed it out to October, but October can be the new August, you know, that very soon we're going to be like, we really have to really be on it. So there's still, how do we make space for philosophical, but also keep honing down to the practical and moving the summit forward. So one of my concerns about that is that Friday, the Friday working group is coming, it is coming up to Friday soon, in a few days. Anybody is welcome to join that working group. But one of I think the next task that we're going to try to figure out in the Friday group is who to have for our that first week that we're calling the Razzle Dazzle day. And so one of my urgencies in gathering the international, making sure to fortify the international, like that we're an international group and it's not just the US and a few token folk, is how, what would that look like that first day, so that it would feel really international. There's also pieces, I think, that this group really needs to inform the larger group about language, like Mira mentioned. Like when we talk about peer respite, is that not like without opening it up to everything, can we open it? Or maybe we do want to open it up to everything, but if we stay with the ideas of peer respite and soteria as a way to coalesce the larger group, maybe future summits could bring in other groups, but maybe there's a different word than peer respite that we should be using, but it's very known in the US, and I think there are, like, the World Health Organization recognizes that term too, but maybe it doesn't cover everything. Anyway, so there's a part of, so I'm here holding this tension between product and process and movement building, which I hear is a beautiful piece. And I want to cede to the people here who are organizers, or because that's something it's not my temperament, but I so highly value and hold. But also holding that piece of, like, we need some forward movement around the nuts and bolts of this, of the summit. Thank you. Jen, and then Elke.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks very much. Thanks everyone for all of your contributions so far. And I want to try my best to I always seem to be a sort of try to accommodate lots of different perspectives, but hold true to my own. Whether I can do that or not, I don't know. So first of all, I think we need to take on board what Jim Bluss, am I pronouncing it right, Jim?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, my eyesight's not that good. Said about acknowledging why we need it. And I don't think we can have a razzle dazzle day saying, oh, isn't all this wonderful, without saying, well, why do we want to change anything? So one of the things I was going to suggest is the Soteria Network in the UK, our next webinar, and I'll send you all details of this. It's going to be on the 17th of July at 3 o'clock British summertime. And it's going to be Soteria, past, present and future, the evidence for the model, for this model of care. And I know part of that will be looking at why we still need it, what's wrong with the current. And it might be we can either use bits of that or ask Bob Whitaker, it's with Bob Whitaker, I didn't say that, who could, I think we've already thought about including him in. So I think he could do that while still showing why we need it. It's going to talk about the World Health Organization latest report, that's going to be included in it. So it's worth bearing that in mind. Thinking what Kim had said about all the different ways of working, there might be all sorts of wonderful things around the world we haven't even heard of yet that could work really well for us, but may equally work very well in different circumstances. And I think whatever we decide is what do we use? fidelity criteria for Soteria might work very well in a world where you have quite a lot of big houses or whatever, but in somewhere in Asia or Africa, you might need to adapt that. Yeah, so I think there are ways of adapting it. And I was just reminding people that if you look at this, I don't know how well you can see this. If I was a fast typist, I'd put it on the chat. So that's the Soteria Network website, and you can download this booklet if you haven't come across it. That's got the brief history of Soteria and a definition of what we're about. And I think it covers, perhaps it's easier if I read it to you, a network of people in the UK promoting the development of drug-free and minimum medication therapeutic support. So I think picks up what Mira was saying. I think ideally, I think most of us would prefer things to be drug-free, but I think the thing we should be promoting is around choice. So remember that word around choice, because for some people to have a night's sleep, if they've not slept for a week, for example, they might need something sometimes to help them, but that's different from something being prescribed as a long-term treatment plan. And I think we have to be pragmatic about that.
Jenna, type this. Can you hold it up again and let me show me that URL again? That's
yeah. Sorry.
Soteria Network.org. Okay, thank you. I got it.
Yes, yeah. So it's all on there, and you can download this booklet from there. Mira's put it up for me. Thank you. Right. I'll have to do one more thing I was going to say. Yeah. So the thing that Kim was saying about the different ways of working around the world, because this summit, and I don't know whether we've clarified this, is going to take place on 5 Sundays for 3 hours. That's the plan? Yeah. During October. For me, if people are connecting at the beginning, then there'll be loads of opportunities between those major sessions for people to connect and learn from each other. If we can get people joining from around the world, we can learn about more things, and that can become part of the organic stuff that can, if appropriate, feed in to the main drag. Does that make sense?
Network every day of the meetings.
Sorry,
I was going to say network every day.
That's what I mean. I think naturally people, if they're hearing something from someone through the chat or whatever, people can start to network, and all kinds of things might blossom that we never knew existed. And I think that's good, and we can all learn from. I think I've said enough now. Yeah.
Thank you. So just for everybody to know, if you raise the computer hand at the bottom, there should be something that says reactions, and there's a hand. And then if you go into the participants list, it shows the order of hands. So Elke is next, and then Jim and Kim.
Okay, yeah, I lost already what I wanted to say, but there was a lot of talking about the anti-psychiatry movement, and we in Belgium, we are very sometimes very modest in the anti-psychiatry movement, because we are mainly searching for alliances, also in the healthcare, because when we are strongly believing against what's happening in the mental health care, there is a lot of moving. I can't explain myself. We want to have a connecting movement with the healthcare together. We want to move together and not against the psychiatry. So I find it quite difficult to hear if it's the main vision of the summit, that it will be the anti-psychiatry, maybe.
No. If we do, we're dead.
Jim,
That's
Jim,
what
there's different, hold on, there's different perspectives here. So that's yours, but hold off.
Sorry.
Elke's offering hers, and other people have others. Yeah.
Couldn't help myself.
And what do you want to say, Jim? That if we do wear that?
It's if you're really believe if you're anti-psychiatry, this is my opinion, then it's going to take much, much longer to make the change that you want to have.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. If you dance with the devil, make sure that you're leading.
They say.
But that's what you're trying to do. So we have written with our working group of Soteria in the Flanders. We have written a manifesto, and we want to look for alliances in the whole with citizens, but also in mental health care. And it's a slow movement, but I think how do you call it? The alliances will be enduring. It will be stronger. So we don't want to be led by the psychiatry later on. I don't know if I explain myself. You get if you want to help me a little bit. My English is very.
You're doing great.
Very.
And maybe whoever speaks next can try to summarize what the person before them says, and that can be a nice way to make sure we're all understood. Elke, do you feel like you got to say what you wanted to say?
More or less. Maybe later, if I'm forming my words in my head, I will try it later on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please, no apologies. Thank you all for doing it in English. So it's yeah. Kim, would you be willing to try to? Oh wait, Jim is next, I think. Maybe Jim, would you be willing to first make sure to say what Elke said?
Well, my sense of what Elke said was that in Belgium, they're not portraying themselves as so anti-psychiatry because they want to basically be able to work with them. And then Jim basically said that's maybe my paraphrasing, a recipe for disaster. And I actually appreciate both views. I mean, the psychiatric movement often has demonized people that have worked in the system, and I don't think that. I think there's room for both. I think it's very hard to move psychiatry very far from inside, and a lot of times it ends up being lip service. But the reason why I raised my hand was this summit has been billed as soteria and peer respite for months and months, and trying to think about, I mean, incorporating, other models and how to do that and not make it kind of take away from the original idea and not make it be too, again, get too big. I think there's a danger of trying to do too much. So one thought I had was, one of the ideas we had was to have follow-on, meetings maybe monthly. And one of those meetings could maybe be a presentation by different groups of how their different approaches. Another was, I guess a certain amount of time could be reserved for that. In the main summit. I think that depends on how that shapes out. And I apologize for getting on late, and I wasn't planning on this, and I'm not sure how much longer I can be on, but I'm glad to was able to get on.
I'm glad you made it, Jim. Kim, do you want to try to, do you want to try and summarize what Jim said? And then
I try my best with my little vocabulary of English, but as much as I got it is to have like the summit because it was prepared for a long time, and then like also to see if there's a possibility to create longer discussions and other meetings and networks which are broader. And I mean, I just wanted to say, like, I agree on a lot what was said here, and I'm also like, I wasn't like sure how we actually got into this discussion about anti-psychiatry, because it also like to me doesn't make so much sense to get into depth about that. And for me, it is more like, I mean, why I was also bringing this up is more like, first, I'm sure because we were like invited, but also like all the, and I'm not against like a summit or like a product. It's not like my approach. It's more that and I also can understand that there's like a shift of generations and people want to leave something for the next generations, and also like to reflect on what has happened. But for me, it's more like also the feeling of what we are discussing here and what we're doing. It's actually not so much more like, let's say, like a lot beside the mainstream, because if we just look at this like WHO's old compendium of like best practices, like the paradigm shift is happening right now, and we're not like anymore like someone who has like work in the underground and against this big psychiatry, but actually it's happening at the moment. There's a lot like happening in the like with big organizations which are jumping on the train of there has to be a change, and there's also like a compendium about like good practices, also like talks about how to get there. And my feeling is this is happening. What's missing is like actually a network of those practices and networks to connect, to support each other, and to learn from each other. And this is like my interest and what I was like bringing up to get more into depth with that, which is not against like having the summit and to create like some kind of like of like an interest in the work you all are doing here.
And I just want to say, Kim, that, and I didn't mention this at the beginning, I should have, but the 3 goals of the summit that have been identified, the one is bringing new people in or making the case, you know, outward, kind of the razzle dazzle piece. But one of the main goals is the networking, is exactly what you just said, is how to support people already doing the work. And then the third is the giving the tools and the resources for people wanting to make it happen. So please hold that piece up, and maybe Jen, maybe tell Helen Spanler in England also, that was one of the her or their main goals also. So and they kind of haven't been coming as much, but maybe knowing that that's also a main interest of yours, maybe we can lure them back in. So that would be wonderful. Jen, yeah.
Yes, so I've got to go soon, so I've got another meeting after this. I'm just going to actually mention that I think Grace just referred to something we have here called Asylum Associates that produces quite a radical zine, is it called? I say magazine, but some people say zine, don't they? Yeah, right. Which is also a movement. And one of our Soteria, we've got friends of Soteria in the UK, and she's on the editorial board of the Asylum. She's currently living in southern India, but she seems okay about operating in the middle of the night. So I was going to ask her if she wanted to join us for another one, either of these internet, if she's able to, because she's very good at publicizing things and would be able to put it in the Asylum on the website and perhaps put an article about it in the next magazine that's online and in real life. So shall I do that?
Please.
Yeah. Okay.
Jen, thank you.
I think I got to go now. Anyway, I'm really pleased that Elke and Huguette can, am I saying your name right? Huguette?
Yeah.
Yeah, really pleased you could join us. And if you know anyone else in other parts of Europe, because I really don't know enough about, or you, Kim. There's probably satiric groups in France, for all I know. So
Italy?
let's bring people
Can I
together.
say something on that? In the French part of Belgium, there are a lot of work about institutional psychiatry. You know this institutional psychiatry. They create spaces for it's something like Soteria. But they stay in contact with the institutional psychiatry. So like Elke explained, they don't fight against the psychiatry. They create spaces and working together. And there are some houses who are open for broader ideas and some new ideas, and yeah, but this is in the French part of Belgium. Not you know this, Elke, what I am saying?
Heard from it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are some people who are working together with Ludie van Bouwel who are very familiar with this. Yeah.
Isn't it Belgium where there's this town that the people adopt folks living with a mental illness and help them?
Yeah,
that's right. It's famous around the world.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
that's true.
yeah. There were pioneers. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I like also, Jim. I mean, you mentioned the idea for a continuum, to create a continuum. I like this idea. That's a good idea. I believe that a lot of psychiatrists are ready to make a shift, or they live with a fear to lose their job, and they need a safe bridge for encounter.
Right.
And
So
how
step down, you know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And also create a bridge for encounter. So for both sides, how to meet each other in a safe space and to communicate with each other. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I am not a hero writer in English. I do my best to to explain what I like to share.
You did really.
Thank you, Huguette.
Yeah.
So you're saying, Huguette, that you were mentioning that there are these houses in France, in the French, not France, but in the
French part of Belgium. Yeah.
That are doing more like a deinstitutionalized form of psychiatry.
Yeah.
Where
but into the institution.
It's part of the system, it's
Yeah.
part of the institution, but it's more small scale and family oriented.
Yeah, it's free in and out, free
Not
space.
locked door, people can come
yes.
and go.
Yeah, yeah.
Families.
And there are a lot of encounters in an atmosphere of open dialogue.
They're doing
a lot
open
of
dialogue
meetings,
there.
Yeah, between family and guests of the houses and professionals. A lot of.
Yeah, thank you. So Elke, Kim, and then I'll put myself on. Yeah. And Jen, thank you so much for coming and being part for as long as you can.
Thank you, Jen, for inviting us.
See you soon.
And before I forget, Huguette and Elke, please put your name and email address in the chat so that I can add you to the group.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to admit that in Belgium, what we are trying to do is to redivide the financial flow from the government. There is a lot of money that goes to the very top of the mental health care, There is like 80%, I don't know which percentage, but there goes a lot of money to the specialists. And what we're trying to do is like redividing the money and return it back to the community. So the expertise of mental health care that goes back to the community, and there we want to have our expertise in the villages. So there are three like parallel movements. There's Soteria houses, but there's also open dialect that we want to connect. But beside that, there is, if I translate it exactly, it's quarter making, but quarter making, that means like there are mental health workers working in the community with their expertise, and to make the community more to create more hospitality for mental vulnerability.
Vulnerable people. Take
Yes,
your
yes.
time.
So it's like
Take your
tongue
time.
switch.
It's so hard. It's so, thank you.
Yes, it's quite hard to have yeah, explain myself. There's a lot that I want to say, but it's difficult to explain all at once. So when I say we need the mental health workers, is because we need their expertise too. There was in the government, like in 2014, I think they quit some beds in the psychiatry to implement the mental health in the mobile teams, so they can work at the houses. And they redivide the landscape. So there are 13 regions of mental health care. And we want to work with the regions, but there are a lot of types of mental health. So there are psychiatries, but there are also the mobile teams, but also the mental health ambulance care. So there, we need to work together if we want to implement Soteria houses in the Flanders. That's what I wanted to say about anti-movement. We tried to explain the manifesto to them with a lot of connecting language. And even then, it's very difficult to explain ourselves, because we need to say also what's not working and what we want to change. So we can't applaud for everything that's happening in the psychiatry. That's not our goal, because we shouldn't exist if it's not necessary. So we need to express ourselves with all the defects and all the weaknesses that's happening in the psychiatry. So yeah, we dance with the devil, but I think we're leading.
You remember that.
Elke,
Okay, I will. Yes.
if there's a way to get the manifesto that we could somehow translate it into English, wow, I would love to see that.
I already have that for you.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, I have it. I will. Maybe I can submit the file in the chat. So I will.
So what I
look it
will
up.
say for Huguet and Elke is I will add you to the Google group. Please make sure that you check that things from the Google group aren't going into spam or promotions, because sometimes people aren't getting them. But once you're part of the Google group, then you'll have access to the Google Drive. And Stan and Jim and others, but mostly the two of them, have put many, many amazing documents on there. And maybe we could put this manifesto in there as well. And the hope, and Kim, I would love to talk to you about this. You say you've created websites, and Jim and also Bob Whitaker from Mad in America have offered hosting a website that maybe we could put things. anyway, there's different reasons for putting things on a website versus a Google Drive, but we do want to have a website where people can come and maybe, Jen left, maybe we could do it under this banner of the Soteria Network. I know in, is it Germany that has the end of the URL .de? That's Germany, yeah?
Yeah.
That there's the Soteria International Association, something like that. But I don't, that's one of the questions. Who are they? And are they more medical model? Are they more, what I would hope would be more of a fidelity criteria? Would they be interested? Should we be reaching out to them? Would we want to be under, like, why start, should we start a whole new thing? Or there are these two things already, maybe, anyway, so these are some of the questions. I am hoping that, so I just want to say, I want to make a comment and then kind of a direction that, oh God, Kim, I think you were ahead of me. Go ahead.
I mean, just very shortly, because I was like, between yesterday and today, I was just thinking how to like proceed with this group, and I thought like it's also good to have us here and like discuss things, but also just to get a little bit into the working mood. I think it would be great to just, as already like almost it's happening, like to reach out to the Asylum magazine, to reach out to different other initiatives, but also just like to gather like informations of like different projects, and then to also like sort out things, and also to agree who contacts who, and then to invite people. And that's like more what I was thinking of, to actually like think together of like who we could invite, who knows who, and where to get like the informations about that. For example, there are like already this European network of users and survivors of psychiatry. There's also this world network of users and survivors of psychiatry. There's also like this compendium of the WHO. So there's a lot of resources where we could just like grab and reach out to people and to write them and ask them if they would like to join, or at least to invite them to the summit. And that's like what I was thinking about, like between yesterday and today's meeting, what has to be done.
Yeah, thank you. So your hope from this meeting today is that we do some brainstorming about who should we reach out to, and then who should actually do the reaching out. Yeah. Did I get that?
Yeah, exactly.
So the comment I want to make is that in the US, so in the US, people who have the lived experience of, I guess I feel like I have lived experience light because I was never caught by the system. And it has been made very clear to me that I should not be thinking that I can speak for people who have been through the system and have been force medicated and held against their will, and that experience. So I know people who have been through that, and there's a whole range, you know, that have been trying for decades to change the system by, you know, offering great ideas and maybe having the system say, sure, we'll do, you know, either squash it, or when it gets too big, say, sure, we'll that sounds like a great idea, and then co-opt it. Like having something called Soteria House, but having it be medication first, last, and always. So that is then no longer, my opinion, a Soteria House, and I wish they wouldn't call it that. But there's that, you know, we can dance with the devil and we'll lead, and all of a sudden you're no longer leading. And when that happens, it sometimes gets like you don't even realize it. but people for decades had been fighting this fight, the Mad Liberation Front. There's many, and they were before my time, and they're currently, and I am new to that, and so I can't speak for those groups, but many of them are anti-psychiatry, identify themselves as anti-psychiatry for that reason, not because they're like, they're unreasonable people and don't get that collaboration is a great thing, but because they've tried, and they have gotten the short end of the stick. So I very much want to deeply appreciate the people who hold up that piece, because I think those are the people in a coalition who will be helping make sure that we are not going down that path of getting co-opted. On the other paw, like the people from Soteria Israel, part of their talk was, part of the way they started, part of the groundbreaking that allowed Soteria Israel to come through was some psychiatrist had somebody in seclusion for a month, and somebody leaked it to some morning talk show radio host, who then started saying, and this is day 31, and this is day 32 of this person's seclusion, and started creating this giant buzz about it. And the psychiatrist was all, "You don't tell me how to treat my patients, I'm the doctor," kind of a thing. But they never demonized this is just their way. They never demonized that psychiatrist. And eventually it took this guy 100 days, I think he was in seclusion, with the psychiatrist defending it the whole time. But it led to an enormous, that hospital that doctor worked for didn't have anybody in seclusion or restraints for an entire year after. And it had a remarkable drop in seclusion and restraints after that throughout Israel. And now that doctor actually has come around to being a supporter of Soteria Israel. But they also, but they've also made some compromises. So it's a dance, and we're always making choices. Anyway, I just want to say that. Also that people, if I know many people in the planning group will be very shy of uplifting something that absolutely claims to be anti-psychiatry, because that'll be a way that, like, if there are funders or whatever, they'll be totally freaked out. And like Rethinking Psychiatry has never said we're anti-drug, we more take it. Some of our group are anti-drug, some are people who prescribe. Most of us say informed choice, but it has been, but we've been branded anti-psychiatry, and so they just, there's a way that our information has been marginalized. So it's just it's a dance that we should think strategically about. I think the hope that I had from this group was that we would think about who we would want to speak. And maybe we'll find out that it's premature to go there. Maybe we should be hold off for another meeting while we have more people come. But I know there's a concern about reaching out to a speaker and getting it on their calendar. So there's that tension.
I'm not sure, Grace, was that like an answer to what I said? Because I felt like
both.
Because I was definitely totally not into this direction of anti-psychiatry. So I was like a little bit felt lost about this answer, because I was more like really directly speaking about like where is this heading towards, and what are the next steps?
No, yeah, I know. I think, Kim, what that's an answer to is that I very much want actually you to be one of the keynote, but like but I don't know, you know, I like that's just in my view of it. I was thinking about that because you're more, the Runaway House is more a pure respite. But then I think like that would freak people out if the keynote person was identified their organization as an anti-psychiatry organization. So it's just I think that's me answering my own internal struggle, and I hadn't even like mentioned to, you know, like to you or other people, like, so just part of this is like, who should, it's just me saying, here are all the pieces, where do we go, but can we think about who should be I'm hoping that Voice, Bob Whitaker would interview Voice as for the Soteria side, though I know Jim would like just Bob to do it, and so that hasn't even been decided. But like, I know Cindy's thinking, oh, we should have somebody from Peer Respite in the US and somebody from Peer Respite from international. And I'm thinking that feels, why not just have an international, why not have somebody from outside the US? So there's just all this like, how do you even make that decision? And are we trying to push it ahead of its time? But that's what the Friday group is going to be grappling with.
This is a good time. There is something happening in the world right now. The world is ready for some social change, and I think that this is a really good time to promote these ideas. There's also a lot of resistance, right, from the conservative quarters, but yeah.
And like who gets said that you know, if some of the psychiatrists are embracing this as a way to save their own asses, they're not embracing it for the reason of, wow, people have been harmed. And there's a much better way for people. I mean, there are people who are going to embrace it for that reason, but there are some people who are like, well, you know, I guess we're reaching a maximum of how much we can maximize profits with drugs, so maybe we can, like, this is a new market, you know, we could open these small we'll call them Soteria houses, but we'll make sure that we get in there with the drugs. Like, that's not, I think we could all agree that's not what we're looking for. So yeah.
But I'm struck how pretty much every Soteria has had an association with a psychiatrist, beginning with Lauren Mosher, and most of the Soteria projects that I'm aware of today, there's a psychiatric component to it.
But it's not a top-down component. Like the psychiatrist is very much, is kind of sidelined. They come in once in a while. Lauren, the way Voice talks about it, you know, Lauren was in once every few months. You know, when I was in Soteria, Israel, I never saw the psychiatrist, you know? So if people are thinking, oh, this should be a top-down thing, I think it really loses I think it loses something.
No, everything about both Pure Respites and Soteria is the lack of the hierarchy, the democracy, the everybody is an equal in the house.
Yeah, and thank you, Amira. And I'm sorry, I'm in conversation mode. I wasn't raising my hand. I was going back and forth. But I see now Mira and Elka also.
My turn?
Thanks, Stan. Yeah.
Yeah, is it my turn? I wanted to say there are psychiatrists and there are psychiatrists. There are psychiatrists who do terrible things to people, or they order other people to do terrible things to people, or they put their signature on a paper which allows other people to do terrible things to people. And there are psychiatrists that we all know, like Peter Breggin, Thomas Sass, and there's a very long list of psychiatrists who work out, who do have a degree in psychiatry, but they don't agree with the psychiatric system as represented by the American Psychiatric Association. So when we say, if we say we're against psychiatrists or psychiatry, again, we have to be specific. Which psychiatrists are we against? Which parts of the system are we against? You know, I'm not against the money that's in the psychiatric system. I just wish I had it instead of they.
Elke and Kim.
I want to complete what Mira is saying, because I like very much what she's saying, that we need those companions, those psychiatrists who mean very well, because there are a lot of, they call it in Flemish, white ravens. I don't know if it's translated correctly. The white birds, the exceptions, because they feel more attacked when we move against them. They feel very not seen in their good intentions. And we have some psychiatrists who are moving very, how do we call it, very beautiful, in a beautiful way. They are like houses for chronic mental sick people who are homeless in Ghent, my city. They are creating houses, and now there are mental workers, mental health workers of the community who will work there together with the open dialogue method. So everything is finds its way to connect together. So I just want to complete what Mira is saying. We need those white birds to walk with us, and so we can change from within in the psychiatry. Small steps too. We want to try also in our work to write restorative stories, the recovery stories. That's better. With the patients from within when they are all still in process in the psychiatry, that we want to work with the writer, that they can write down their story, so they can own it, and they can more express themselves in their experience, so it's less traumatizing. Yeah.
Thanks, Elke. Kim.
Yeah, I'm just like a little bit puzzled because I feel like every time I speak, like there's this whole monologue about anti-psychiatry, and I feel like it's kind of like also devaluing what I'm saying, and I'm also feeling like no one ever like asked about what does it mean to the runaway house to be an anti-psychiatric facility. We haven't even spoken about the concept, but then like this like really magical bad word comes up, the term, and everyone has to say like something about like this is bad, we shouldn't like speak about it. And I mean, I'm working in this institution since now 16 years, and we are working with homeless people, and we're working in a lot of networks. And the last conference I've been on was in India to work with truly international with people, and I'm a little bit just wondering what's going on, because I feel like if it's really about working international, and my intention is not at all like just to speak about psychiatry and just like to have this thing of like they're bad people and blah blah blah. My intention is really about like how do we create something which is different without coercion. And if we could all agree on this, I'm totally fine with it, and we can like build a like greater network. But what doesn't work for me is like every time I speak, then like to speak about anti-psychiatry, also I'm like haven't like lost a word about it. So it's kind of like puzzling me.
Yeah, and I also want to say, Kim, that you know, when I hear people talk like raising up the what we in the US would call the unicorns, um, uh, as opposed to the White Ravens, that I feel like it devalues the work of the people who have been doing this on the ground, who themselves understand it because they were caught in the system and they got out and they found that the system did not help. It made it worse. And I think it's fine to want to come to it in a collaborative way, but to realize that, you know, like Elke, when you're talking about wanting people to write their stories, like Mind Freedom has been doing that from a grassroots place with survivors as a survivor-led movement for decades. You know, like it seems to me that most of the best interventions are survivor created. And so I get, I personally find myself situated as a, like a bridge person. That's just like the positionality I occupy, but I so don't want that to undermine the people on whose shoulders I stand on, who have been doing this work for, I mean, literally decades, out of necessity, because they were coerced and experienced that and don't find that most psychiatrists are their friends and like that. So I'm so sorry, Kim, if there are ways that I contributed to that. And I do want to hear what Runaway House is and does. And also your experience as and kind of identity as an organizer. I don't have that gene, so I really value that. That's what I wanted to say. Okay.
Yes, I want to add, sustain what Elke was saying. I know some very motivated psychiatrists working in the institution in Belgium who have lived experience, who had lived experience more than once, lived a psychosis, and they are very silent about this, but they like to integrate this in their work. They are very motivated. But I'm saying this because I fear they need also our support, the support from outside to get the approbation. Is that now for now the I don't find.
Give me the chance or an opportunity.
Yeah, to feel that they are sustained by other people who believe in them. Some of them are very young and they need I have lived experience. I have sustained a very young psychiatrist who had did peer support for a family with a lot of trauma, and this was a very good peer support. He made an article about it. He submitted it to ESPS, but they don't accept this, not scientifically based enough. But it is very, very interesting to know his experience and also the experience of the family.
Yeah.
But they are so difficult to be accepted and to
So so how we maybe can take another 20 minutes, or I can make somebody else the host, but I actually have to work at soon. So so in terms of either main speaker or in terms of reaching out and who should reach out to whom, can we shift that way to think about that? Either of those for our last amount of time.
I think we're probably getting close to kind of winding up. I don't know about anybody else. I'm sort of running out of steam, can only sit in front of a Zoom screen for so long, but I really appreciate you, Get and Elga and Jim, you guys being here, your experience and your wisdom. I had some ideas like I really like what Jim said about having people from around the world, you know, coming in and talking about their programs and what's working and what isn't. And for a moment there, earlier in our conversation, I had this flash of this first day where we're going to have 3 hours and we're potentially going to invite Robert Whitaker to come in and interview. We're really hoping to have Voice Hendricks because he is that, you know, he was there in the very earliest years and just this wealth of experience that he brings. But another person from Pure Respite, and I think, you know, we were talking about Sarah Davido, but it would be nice to have somebody who is maybe from another country, from another place. But we talked about this sort of fishbowl idea where we would have a group of individuals in a conversation. And I'm thinking, you know, that maybe for the second half of that first day, we could have people like Nelka and Kim and several of us, you know, sit down in conversation, share our experience, compare notes, you know, on how we work in different places. You know, we're often very dependent on our local circumstances. You know, your 13 regions and so on, and each region is different, right? Each has different administrators and somewhat different policies. And how do you work within all that kind of stuff?
You mean in Canada, 13 regions?
Oh, no, Elka, I think you had mentioned that there was 13 mental health regions.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and each one is here we have regional health authorities. But again, you know, they're more or less local, provincial, or in our province, there are 5 for the whole province, which is just a little more than 1 million people. But they make independent decisions about what programs they promote, support, where they spend their money and so on. But I'm also thinking, because this we're always tied to looking for funding. And again, you know, I keep talking about being a 60s child, you know, but in the 60s, you know, the last thing that we would do is turn to the government and say, hey, we need some funds because we want to fix you guys up, you know. That was the oppressor. That was the people that we stood against. So we had to do whatever it was that we were going to do. We did it with our own money that we raised however we could, you know, whether it was publishing underground newspapers or writing or making art or, you know, forming co-ops and all this stuff. So, and then I think about Venezuela wasn't always a basket case like it is today. And when Hugo Chavez stepped in, he found it very difficult to change the system. The system was so entrenched among the elites that he wasn't able to budget. So his approach was to create a parallel health system, a parallel education system, basically parallel systems, which were funded. I guess at that point he had control over the oil dollars, but you know, he found funding for those. But sometimes it's not possible, and it's not true for all of us. For some of us, it's easier. For others, I live with a very conservative government here right now, and it would be very hard for me to really get much movement and much support from people in the current government, for instance. But in other places, that could work very well. And so we need our allies wherever we can find them. And I really think that these international voices, because of our different experiences and our different practices, you know, sharing those. I'm always looking to learn from what you're doing. That's how I've learned everything that I do. So that's my thoughts right now, kind of summing up. And always see questions.
Stan, I want to say thank you for your idea about interconnectedness. This was great. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us, and I hope that we can continue. And we are. You saw the forming, storming, norming, performing. You know, we're kind of. I'm watching this kind of unfold. You know, and it's interesting because, you know, like a clinician, I've just got this little perspective on it. But it's gonna happen, and it'll happen in a very organic way. It will all sort of come together. We each do our bit.
Mhm.
I'm very positive about this. I think we're going to have a great event. I'm so happy to see you. Yeah, no,
And I'm
yeah.
so excited that in Belgium, you're finding ways like that, that the system is open to being steered and redirected and having money funneled into communities. That's the dream, you know? So
The communities don't have the money. That's a pity because it's still in the government. The regions, they have each their president who connects the different organizations of mental health care, but the money stays in the government. So we need to work a lot to receive some money.
And Grace, you know, in your country, there is a bipartisan bill that is presently still being debated, but it supports peer workers and supports people with lived experience and identifies those as being essential to movement forward in American mental health. So there is some progress.
yeah. So do we want to, you know, who else should we be reaching out to? Let's pick up where Kim's, I think that makes more sense for the last few minutes. Who else should we reach out to? And Kim, you know, yeah, Truly International would be like, there's another 3/4 of the globe that isn't here. I think for me, like, I can't imagine how to do it with the time zone differences. So I was just conceptualizing, you know, people in this time zone parameters, but you know, that's why I haven't even thought to try to reach out to people in Oceania and Asia. But if there's a way to do it, you know, and with the different languages, and, you know, I was just thinking like, okay, like from we're babies, we're just being born. How can we do this? And then it's like, oh, right, there's all of that. So I guess I'm curious what your sense is. And then maybe Mira after. Or Mira, do you feel like your comment is directly related?
Am I unmuted?
Yeah.
Okay. You're asking how do we get these other people from internationally on board, and you're raising concerns about the time zones. That is a problem, but I do also think that we should give them the opportunity to say whether they're willing to be up in the middle of their night or something like that. We should first approach them and then try to work out the time zones. But what I wanted to ask you was, there are a lot of websites like Mind Freedom that has a whole list of international contacts. There's, I know, antipsychiatry.org that apparently a lot of people know how to find them. There is somebody mentioned ENUSP. Are you writing it down? Is that what you're doing? But this is recorded, right?
Yeah, but will I go back and look? I don't know.
There's, I don't have to say ENUSP. There is the Association Against Psychiatric what's it called? I'd have to look that up. It's the one that Chagai Ariel and his friend in Germany set up, and it's based in Switzerland. Something rather against, like, I'd have to look it up to get the name right now. But so there's lots of these websites that have international contacts. And have you sent out messages to them? Hey, would you like to join us? Would you like me to do that? I mean, I'm volunteering to do this. Would you like me to do that? Give me the text you'd like me to send them, and I'll send out these emails.
Yeah.
I'll look people up and send them emails, and probably most of them will come back with, most of them will bounce because the email address has changed. But I'm talking about experience here. I'm an old lady, Grace. I have a whole lot of experience with the internet. If you would like, I'd like to volunteer for this job, but I would do it in your name as a volunteer for Rethinking Psychiatry. I would do that. I would not do that as Metzelf at this point. I would do this as a volunteer for Rethinking Psychiatry. You give me the text that you would like me to send out, and I will look these people up and see who I can find and send it. And you tell me whom you definitely do not want me to send this text to.
I think I was just looking at that WHO document again, and all those programs listed in there, they've all got websites and email contacts, and they're all recent. But I think that we should be maybe reaching out to each of those. They're not all peer respite, but they're almost all peer supported in one way or another, and utilize lived experience. So.
What is
And
also,
Kim,
sorry.
Yeah, pardon?
I guess I was just curious what your, originally, I feel like this meeting came out of your presence, and I'm wondering if you would just talk about what your sense is.
I mean, I don't know, for me, as I said yesterday, and I also said today, and I'm glad that Mira was now just like volunteering also to just reach out. And I feel the same, just to reach out to like organizations which already exist and to invite people. And I also think we just have to agree on the text, and perhaps, like as Mira said, perhaps you can write something great, or we could just like write something together. Because otherwise we would just invite people and they don't know what to expect, and perhaps they expect too much, too less. And just to like bring them on board with the right words. And I was also, as I said, like days before, also thinking of the compendium of the WHO, but also there's this World Network and the European Network of users and survivors of psychiatry, which we could just invite. There are a lot of organizations which are involved in the network. And I also don't know if like the email addresses and the organizations are still existing or not, but it's just something we could try and see what happens. And perhaps they know then more people, and this is how I think like the snowball is starting to create like a bigger snowball. So
Create the snowball. Yeah, also Intervoice, right? They're all in many, many places.
sure.
So we have white ravens, unicorns, and snowballs now. That's good. Who else? So Intervoice, there's in the US, there's the, well, so there's the international, but like even in the US, we haven't reached out to so many people, like the Fireweed Collective, which used to be Icarus Project, and the Spoonie Collective, which is queer and trans folk of color, disabled folks of color. And so there's so there's all kinds of groups even within the US that we haven't even done outreach to. Who else? I mean, INTAR is international, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm part of Inter, but we are not like Inter knows about rethinking psychiatry, but we are like more organizing like conferences and
Uh,
working together with different organizations to create conferences and impacts on different continents. Like I said, like the last one was in India, the next was supposed to happen in Kenya, but there were a lot of like difficulties, so it didn't happen. And right now we're also in like this online format. So yeah, it's as I'm part of Inter, I'm already like gave the information to the other people of Inter.
Thank you. So are there other groups that we want to think about reaching out to that haven't been mentioned? I mean, there's whole continents I know nothing about.
I notice we don't have South America, Middle and South America. Australia is very big into mental health, and we don't have anybody specifically from Australia. I find that interesting. I know people who know people in in Australia that I could get some connections to if you want to try that. Any of the Commonwealth countries, the old Commonwealth, still have, connections to Great Britain, British Isles, and what have you. So I received some training on CBT for psychosis at the University of Washington, and one of the lead people from that was a psychiatrist in Scotland. So there's no end to this stuff, but at a point in time, particularly for the conference and so on, you don't want to keep expanding. You're going to have to focus and just put it together and go with it. My advice. Otherwise, it gets so big and your mind just gets blown by who you're not including. Can't do that. Not if you want to get to a point. And remember, some of the people we want to invite are not, that they need some lead time, in order to clear their calendar for that. That group that we made that panel out of for our paper, we talked to those folks a couple of months ago, and even that we thought was too short of a time for them to have their stuff together by October. Some of these folks have to keep a calendar for the whole year, just, make the tough decision. Let's go for it.
Mira?
Yeah, I think that Jen's right about is also spreading your net too wide. There's a risk in that as well, because all these people have all different ideas, and once you bring all these different ideas together, it becomes unmanageable. However, I did volunteer, and if you would like me to do that, if you would still like me to do that, then I would like to ask all of you, send me an email and give me your suggestions where you would like me to send these messages to, or give them to Grace, and Grace will collect them and she'll send me a list of whom she wants me to send the messages to, one or the other. If you want me to do it.
Seize the, we're all working together, Mira. So yeah, feel free. If you don't feel comfortable putting it out in your name, use Rethinking Psychiatry in Mind Freedom's name. And Yeah, that's fine. And
Seize-
yes, so
Well,
who,
Seize the moment.
Let's get together later, Grace, by email and see if we can organize this.
and yeah, and who wants to help write it? I can help, but I don't like just doing it on my own.
Well, maybe, I mean, the thing is, I can't represent you. I'm still not really clear what is meant by a summit. So I can't quite volunteer, but on the other hand, I do like to imagine that I have some writing talent. In fact, if you really like, I could write it in rhyme and iambic pentameter.
And Stan, I know you and I had talked about something, and maybe Kim, were you open to that? It sounded like,
Yeah, sure.
and anybody else, Elke or Huget or Jim?
I'm looking for the focus now. I don't want to spread it that much further. You know, just trying to close the loop here.
So for that means opt out of creating the.
No, I
message?
can't tell you that. This group is together because y'all have the fire. I don't want to throw water on anybody's fire.
I'm just asking who wants to help, yay, but who wants to help write?
Oh,
That's okay. Not everybody has to do everything. There's already 4 of us.
I normally volunteer for everything, and I found out that's a mistake.
Okay.
I'm
Don't-
still learning that, but Grace, you and I started working on something. And Mira, if you could be part of this too, maybe we can share some drafts, you know, and just build on what we have to offer. The letter is gonna need a little bit of modification because in some way, you know, each individual recipient will need a somewhat personalized approach, I think.
Sure.
But
I'm
we can
sorry,
have-
I
we
have to
can come up
go,
with a template.
because I have a client in 2 minutes. I
Good.
want to thank Huget and Elke for joining, and for us old timers. Now we're the old timers, and you will next meeting be old timers too. We're usually meeting, we have a Friday work group and a Sunday big group. And those are all, we seem to just always start at this time. So so I will send out something. I will add you to the Google group, and you should get a notice from them by the end of my day, which might be tomorrow for you. I don't know how that works.
Mhm.
If you haven't gotten anything, how will you let me know? But here is my email.
I have your email address. I
You
think
do?
Jen,
Okay, good.
Jen sent it the blind copy, or not the CC. She mentioned you in CC. So I have your
Perfect.
email. I will send it to you. You get too.
And you have my email as well.
All right,
I
yes.
think so. Yes, that's true. So
Okay.
thank you for having us.
Is there a
so
Google
I
group for
wasn't
the
very
international
grateful.
initiative? No, it's just part of the bigger one, and we could just pull out our email addresses. Everybody in the Google group will have access to everybody else's email addresses.
Okay.
So Mira, hopefully that works. All right, I will add this new address for you, Mira. Now you'll have 3. Okay. Take good care, everybody.
you.
Thank you
Thank you.
so very
Bye.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Tschüss. Bye-bye. Ciao.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.